Good morning, good morning, good morning. Welcome to Coffee with Campus Consultancy, episode number 12 on this Tuesday morning. Join with Daniel, who will introduce to you in just a second. Mate, good morning. Thanks for joining me.
Good morning, mate. How are you?
I'm really, really well. We were just before we went live, and if you are joining us live, we'd love to know what's in the mug, what's in the cup this morning. What are you drinking? Daniel, you've won up. You've taken it to a new level. I see you holding one mug there, but I know that's only half the truth. Be honest with me now. What did you bring?
Tea and coffee.
So good. What's in there?
This one, we've got a espresso from Nespresso.
Very nice.
You know, the little automatic machines. And then I add a little bit of condensed milk as well. So it's a little bit of a Vietnamese Italian blend.
So good.
And in here, I've got the traditional English breakfast white with one sugar.
So good. How the parents used to make it, mate? Or is that
the espresso, that's how my parents used to make it and my great-grandparents. But I add the condensed milk because I love Vietnamese coffee from going over there to Vietnam. So I thought I'd add it one day and it tasted good and my friends like it and it helped get me through uni, that's for sure.
I love it. I love it. Now we're going to be talking about uni. Today we're going to talk about how to find meaning in a career. And I'd love to dig into just as a bit of background, a bit of your career journey, if that's cool, mate. I'd love to know, have you always worked with a university? Have you always been interested in what you're doing now? Or did you fall into it? Did you have an idea in the shower? How did it all happen?
I didn't fall into it per se, but I kind of was studying teaching at Victoria University about 6 years ago.
Yep.
And I came across a class. I was studying to be an outdoor education health teacher in secondary school.
Yeah.
And I didn't really even fall into that. I was there as a mature age student. So I went and worked in professional jobs for about 5-6 years, everything from doing warehousing to real estate to what else did I do? Promotional stuff, marketing. And then I decided I wanted to pivot and go back to university and do teaching. And then halfway through my degree, I discovered a class in career development with a great mentor of mine, Angela Dressler at Victoria University. And the way she taught the class, and it was all around career development in sport and education. And it just struck a chord with me. So then I started to pursue the journey of becoming a career consultant. Yep. Which took a while because I had to finish my teaching degree, which was another 2 years. Then I did my postgrad studies in career development. Then I went overseas for 6 months, came back, did recruitment for about 6-7 months, did CRT teaching for a year. Then I landed at Swinburne University doing in the careers team.
Mate, very cool. I've definitely got some things in common with you, not only loving Vietnamese coffee, but the getting involved in the education world, doing a bit of recruitment, traveling overseas. I always say that combination for careers, and whenever I'm working with students, is the most helpful three. Seeing a whole bunch of different cultures, learning a little bit about how to structure learning, because I think there's parallels with career. And then sitting on the other side of the table in recruitment. How insightful is that?
What was your experience of that sort of journey and how it helped you develop?
Yeah, well, the 18 months I spent in grad recruitment was with Teach for Australia, which was awesome because our value prop was, the way I'd always describe it, a little bit tongue in cheek, was like, we want to convince the highest achieving students at the best universities to often, not always, but often move to a different state, often take less salary than they'd normally get, move to an area or town maybe they've never been to, work and study at the same time in a degree that they maybe hadn't ever thought about until they'd come across the work. And it was really interesting because you really had to go straight into what is the meaning, what is the purpose, what is your why, all the questions I want to talk to you about today on how do you find meaning in a career. And when it taught me to ask better questions, and it taught me to put the individual at the entire center of the universe, and that I needed to learn about each person individually. I needed to figure out what drove them, what motivated them intrinsically, pull motivation, not push. It's very hard to push someone to move into an area they've never been to before. But if they're pulled there, very hard. And that's not what you want to do. It's all, and I don't work for them anymore, so I don't want to speak on behalf of them, but from my experience, finding people who are like, I want to do good in the world. There are a bunch of different ways to do that. And this is something that they could dive into and still be challenged. That was one of the biggest things. How do you do for a lot was how do you do good, but also be really challenged and have a lot of growth. And yeah, it was a beautiful experience. I'm super grateful for it.
What about the travel component?
Yeah. Oh, mate, it was amazing. I went and traveled for 2 years. So I left engineering and traveled for 2 years. And if you're listening today, you probably heard a little bit about this journey already. Tim tuning in, awesome. Who've also said Angela was an amazing influence on his work as well. Christine and Chris, good morning from Tassie. Good morning from New South Wales. So for me, the travel was much somewhat to, I think, the horror of the time of my mum, who'd supported me all through school and uni. Traveling for 2 years, and then after becoming an engineer, I was a nightclub promoter, more or less. Like I was the guy standing out front of the bar being like, hey guys, where are you going tonight?
Yeah.
And so have you ever come across a guy named Scott Harrison, Charity Water?
No.
Oh, you got to check that out. His story, I'll send you a copy of his book, Thirst. It's amazing. Are you a reader? Are you a podcaster, a YouTuber? How do you like
I'm a reader.
Great. I'll send you the book.
Yeah.
So good. Literally had this, but his was like the 10x version of mine, like nightclub, similar for me, nightclub promoter. And my moment was I had the career change, what I call like the moment in time, like the serendipity experience. It wasn't, I fell back in love with my childhood passion, which is one way. It wasn't that I was necessarily at the time scratching my own itch, solving a problem I had. It wasn't like a big idea in the shower. For me, it was, I was in a place at a certain time and I saw something and was like, whoa, the world is way different than I thought.
Was that story that I've heard when you were crossing a river or across the river, something was happening? Yeah.
Yeah, across one of the seas in the Mediterranean. So for me, that was just being at a place in time where I was like, wow, life and death is 15 euros. And I was like, like literally a boy died the same day for 15 euros and I went the opposite direction. And I'd spend that on a, if I was in Vietnam, I'd spend that on a couple of coffees and a nice dinner, or in Europe on, some beers at an exotic bar. So that really shook me and said like, wow, there's a lot of good you can do if you rethink your role and using a career as the vehicle for good. Yeah. What do you find with
it's a good statement, rethink your role, because I think what we're going to talk about today, a lot of people with purpose in careers, they think they need to go somewhere dramatic to get it, or which can be the case, but sometimes it can start right where you are.
Like there's on right where you are. I mean, whereabouts are you? You're Melbourne based, correct? Or like
Melbourne based,
greater area. Yeah. I mean, if you were to go, this is an odd question, but on the topic of where you are, if you were to go in any direction from your house, how far do you think you'd have to go before you could find a real person with a real problem, who's in need of some sort of support that a career could be built behind? I would say to students, like, if you want to find something, find a real person with a real problem. It's a good starting spot. But like, I would imagine you wouldn't have to go particularly far to find someone who's, experiencing some genuine hardship, even in a beautiful city like Melbourne.
Yeah, I probably wouldn't even need to leave my house.
That's the honest truth of it, right?
Yeah. Because I was helping one of my brothers go through a lot of career transition just the last few months with everything that's been happening. One of my brothers is in marine, so he's a scuba diver and instructor. So his industry vanished overnight pretty much. Wow. Another one works in tourism while he's studying. So for a couple of weeks there, I was really putting the careers hat on, even living with my brothers.
Wow. And if you're tuning in, you're thinking about your career, I mean, does a career, how do you think about your role in that? Like, I was almost going to say, does the advice you give differ from family to students? But then I was wondering, in a split second, I wonder if advice is even the right word, or how do you think about your role there?
Advice is, I think a good way to think of advice is like pointing people to information, or pointing people to like different frameworks that they can then go and use. But it's really dangerous if you start to like give your own advice based on your own experience. So rule one of career coaching is you don't give someone advice based on your own experience. It's more got to be the frameworks, or lead them to the information they need, or the experiences they need, and then they can have their own experience and make their own journey grow from there.
Yes. I love that.
Which kind of feels like you put the ownership off yourself, but that's what all the career theory sort of points you to.
I love it. And if you are tuning in, given we are live on LinkedIn and on Facebook, if you're listening right now, I'd love to hear in the comments, where have you made a big decision in your career? How did you make it? Did you use a framework? Did you get really good advice or poor advice? Was there a resource or a book or something that really helped you? Was it a TED Talk or a podcast or a conversation, a question you decided to ask yourself? Let us know. We'd love to know. And we'd love to sort of use those as starting points for discussion as well. And Daniel, we were actually having this conversation yesterday with a young guy named Dre at the University of Melbourne. He's a mentor for a whole bunch of different programs. And one of the things we were talking about around mentorship is that mentorship, a way to think about it that we were chatting on, was that it's principle-based. Your mentor will give you a principle and will give you a framework for making decisions. And even in prepping for chatting with you today, I did a little mind map. And one of the categories I used was, I was like, well, what is meaning and purpose? What is that all about? And then the second bit was frameworks. And so off the frameworks, like I have the, what color is your parachute framework and the Ikigai framework and a couple of other just that sort of stuff. Which is very question and inquiry based. No? Like a lot of...
It's very what, sorry?
Like question based and inquiry based. It's more like, what about this? How would you think about this?
Yeah.
Is there a big gun question? Is there a big hammer in career guidance, strategy, consulting? Is there like, here's the question everyone should be asking? Is there anything like that comes up a lot?
There isn't really. There really isn't. I think a lot of it starts from values and where the individual actually is in their current situation. So you've got to kind of start your questions there, and then you can ask open questions to get the person to sort of open up.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Values, I wish I had one answer for you, but it's
not at all.
Form. There's not really one question. One question I like to ask, not sure how backed it is by the career theory, but I sort of like to ask, and I usually only do this in like with friends and family. I sort of like to ask people where they see themselves in like 1, 3, and 5 years, and then see if there's like consistency there, or see if there's like, because what you want in 1 year might be quite different to what you want in 5 years.
Yes.
But I think it's bad to look at just 1 year, and it's bad to look at just 5 years, but it's good, I think, to look at, say, 1, 3, and 5.
Okay, and look for alignment between the three.
Yes.
Is that the key?
Yeah.
That's interesting.
Yeah, because if you think, in 1 year, you might I want to go travel, I want to like do this with my business, or I want to do this in my job. But then 5 years, it might be like, well, I want a family, or I want to buy a house, or so then it's kind of trying to get a balance. So you're happy now, you're happy in a year, you're happy in 3, but you're also going to be happy in 5.
I love that. And the next question I want to ask you before I read out some of these comments, and I'd love to get your hot takes on this, seems to be a really popular topic, which is fun to talk about, and a great talking to you, is what happens when there's not consistency between those three. So if you don't mind, I'd love to go there in a second with you, if that's okay. Yeah,
cool.
So James is jumping in saying, best career advice I got, find a hobby that you love that someone will pay you to do. Yeah, that's really interesting. Chris Allen's saying, I use the way 5 year right now versus dreams and goals. Yeah, okay. I think that's an interesting one too, because I use that a lot of like, where are you now? What are your goals? What's the pathway there? And I like this idea of having a middle point and looking at that in stages. Yeah. And Rebecca Sharp jumping in saying, I read The Success Principles by Jack Canfield and realized that I had some limiting beliefs from my dad and his views on work and jobs, and had to really assess myself and what I wanted and believed. Oh, that's really interesting.
Yeah. It's definitely hard with family pressure.
Yep.
Especially friends, family, teachers from when you've grown up, or family friends who, put ideas into your head. Even media and society in general can, put limiting beliefs into your head. And I mean, we've all got them. I'm sure you've got them. I've got them.
Oh, mate.
Each listener's probably got a limiting belief. It's just natural to have them. I think the key, though, is being aware of it.
And what do you think happens when, from your experience, if someone looks at whether it's limiting beliefs or just incongruence between where I am now, where I want to be in 3 years, where I want to be in 5 years?
Yeah.
I can see that as a potential cause of angst. And to be totally honest, like I love what I'm doing and where I am right now. I really love Melbourne, but I also love being out in nature. And I think probably for me, to be totally honest, in 5 years, I love the work I'm doing and I don't want to leave that. And some of the internal angst I have is I love the work, but I'd also love to live in the mountains. I'd love the weekends to be snowboarding, but I'd also love to be with students and leaders and people like yourself every day. So if there isn't like a clear straight line of like, yes, I just need to keep doing this thing indefinitely. How do you work through that with somebody?
Yeah, and I'll preface by saying I also have those inner battles as well. And I suppose it'd be pretty rare and not normal to have a consistent 1, 3, and 5 year outlook, because that's not really what life's going to be like, because change is the only constant. So, if you were to look at it 1, 3, and 5, it's probably impossible to get that alignment and then for it all to go to plan.
Mm-hmm.
My own personal way that I look at it is I try to find balance. So if what I want in 5 years is, X, Y, and Z, but what I want in 3 years is J, Q, and L, and what I want now is A, B, and C, it's trying to like balance your life so you're not putting all your effort and energy into just the next year. You've also got one eye on down the track. And I think for you, for an example, like if you wanted to be in the mountains, you could start to take your business a certain way where it's online, like you are, which then means that maybe in 5 years, when everyone's a lot more comfortable with the online world, you might be able to do 6 months a year in the mountains, but delivering online stuff.
Yeah.
So if you at least have the awareness of that now, you can start to make decisions based on what you want down the track.
Yeah. I love that. And I'm sure some people are listening in right now, and I would have no judgment if you were, especially if you're a university student who maybe had a casual job, you're making your way through, maybe supporting, a young family or thinking about that. And then you're like, this guy has a job he loves, talks about it all day on LinkedIn, and now is saying he also would like to live in the mountains. Like, I too would like to live on a rainbow. Like, I'd understand if you had that response. So that's after years and years and years of doing this work. So I really want to preface that. So if we go back a little bit, one of the things you mentioned earlier, which I loved, which was one of the questions I had prepped to explore, was values being so important. I know it's very hard to be intrinsically driven to something if you don't know intrinsically what you value. So I didn't do a values exercise until I was 25. I sat down for the first time ever, and a facilitator was like, okay, it's time to write out your values. And I was like, what do you mean? Like, how does one do that?
Me too.
Really? Yeah. What was your experience like? And then I'd love to know, how can we help people maybe figure that out a little bit?
Yeah. Well, my first experience was doing it at university in that career development class. I was probably 26, 27 at the time. Values is a hard one. I'm one of these people that always thinks values are fluid and they change.
Yes.
So again, what you value now might not be the same as what you value in 5 years. And a lot of people talk about having 3 or 4 key values. I'm someone that when I go to write down my values, I'm like, I want freedom and I want structure and I want this and I value the friends and I value family so I kind of seem to value a lot of things, and I like variety. So the values piece is always hard for me personally, because I can't seem to just nail down 3 or 4 key values and then just commit to them for like 5 years. Yes. I like to blend it all in, and I kind of seem to have a lot of values, but then that means maybe some of those values aren't as, they're not as punchy because there's more of them.
Yeah. I wonder, one way I think about it sometimes is, and maybe that sounds like a lot of like the needs-based psychology stuff, where you need certainty and you need variety and you need a certain amount of both.
Yes, exactly.
I always say to students, I get them to think of like the last time you went to a cafe, and I'm like, did you go to a cafe you went to, you knew you liked, so you went there again? Or did you go somewhere brand new? Different people put up their hands. And I'm like, okay, when you went to that cafe, bar, restaurant, whatever, what did you buy? Did you buy something that you'd ordered somewhere else and you knew was good, so you bought it here anyway? Or did you order something brand new you'd never had before? And the hands go up. And then people start to stack it, which is where I think the values gets interesting. Is I look at values as how you do most things regardless of the situation. And so I would say, from like what you shared, like variety could even be a value. in that like things have got to be new and different. But sometimes people go, oh, I went to a new cafe and I ordered something new. Like I'm a maverick, I can do anything. And other people are like, no, I went to my regular cafe at the same time and I got the same thing and I always get it and I'll never deviate. Yeah. And it's like, okay.
I go to the same cafe most of the time, but I always order something different.
Yeah, interesting, right?
Even so it's a bit of coffee. I mix it up like here and there. I'll mix up exactly what coffee I want, but I'll tend to go to the same cafe because I really like the coffee.
Yeah.
But I think with values as well, they can be conflicting.
Yes, that's interesting too.
So as much as we crave freedom, too much freedom might be at the payoff to security. But then we need some security. But then if you've got all this security, then you feel a bit bored and you feel, well, I do.
Yes.
Feel a bit bored and like not challenged. So then you want more freedom and challenge. So you always got to balance your values.
Yes. And
try to find the conflicts.
Yeah, the conflicts are fun, aren't they? That's the good stuff where you're like, oh, I want this, but also want this. And they intermix a little bit there. For someone listening in who's like, okay, but like, I'd like some, like, how do I start with what I value? Like, how do I figure out a starting point, something to go off, even if they want a little bit of that sort of security? I sometimes tell people it's like, if you go to the supermarket, it'll tell you what your values are. Like, there are vegetables and there's a junk food aisle. And like in that moment, it's like your values are what you value. You are making a values-based decision on if you're like, I'm going to have a croissant and I'm going to have some Coke and I'm going to have some M&Ms. Like they're your values coming out. And it's not a judgment. It's not for anyone to say if your values are right or wrong, I think, in this situation. But to go through and go, oh, well, it's just, this is beyond my control. It's like, no, like these are, if you can become aware of, oh, I'm stressed, therefore, I do this. Oh, I'm stressed or I'm worried about something. Therefore, like I'm going to have some M&Ms. It's like, okay, like I'm stressed because of something I value. Yeah. And that's causing me fear or worry. And so I can dig into that. And the response to that is, oh, I like variety and escapism if I'm in that situation. And if you understand those things, you can go, okay, is the way I'm fulfilling this value serving me? Or is there a better way to get variety?
Yeah.
Could I, go for a run along a different route rather than grab the second bag of M&Ms and still get variety, but maybe be a little bit healthier?
Yeah. My general tip for values would be, don't try to work out your values overnight. Yep. Don't try to work out your values even in the next week. You really need to like journal, reflect, take time, delve into the experiences you've already had, the experiences you're having right now, and then also the experiences you want to have, which links back to the 1, 3, and 5 year sort of vision planning.
Yes.
And spend a few months piecing it all together and playing with it and see how it feels. I sometimes find I'll be like one day, oh, I really want to do this. And right now I'm valuing like freedom and travel. So I want to go do this. Yeah. But then I sit on it for a month or a few weeks, and then it might change a little bit, or it might be like, no, you know what? I really value the work I'm doing and I want to, really settle down now. So I guess it's playing with it over a period of time. And then also knowing that once you do bed it down, it's not static, it's fluid. You can always pull something off your vision board or put something on.
Yes. Daniel, that's awesome. So today, if you're tuning in, episode 12, we're going to jump back in the comments. There's heaps there, so we want to work through some of them. We've got an amazing guest who's going to join us in a second as well, just to jump on and share a little bit about his story. And Daniel, relating to that, I love when you look back at where you were or people you knew in a certain period of time and then now, and see how you've changed, but also how other people have changed too. I think it can be really interesting to see those values come to life. And one of my favorite things, as we bring onto the screen a good friend, Darcy, is watching people who are living out their values. Now, Daniel, actually, you might have Darcy's wonderful brand logo just hovering above your head there. So if you were to shift a half inch to the right,
there we go.
There we go. That's.
I can't beat it.
Look, that's perfect. You're perfect. Branding wise, screenshot that, and we're in business. Mate, talking about finding meaning in work, finding purpose in work. Darcy, how are you?
Good, thanks. How are you guys?
Very, very well.
I'm good, mate. How are you?
Yeah, great. Loving the chat. I could link to a lot of the things that you guys were talking about right the way through, which is cool.
Thanks, man. In terms of, it's funny looking your little background there. I see a little shark under the water, jaws.
Oh, yeah.
And I think
Otherwise-
maybe a couple of times ago when we were hanging out in university, it was very much in the surf in the ocean, hoping not to see any sharks behind you. But now I do. Things have changed a little bit for you since then. What's this blue logo all about, and what are you working on?
I think the blue logo links back to something you were talking about, Josh, right at the start of your chat, the serendipity experience. So probably similar to you, I started as an engineer, found myself through UNSW on a trip in Uganda, met a coffee grower over there, and then seemed to quite quickly throw away 5 years of studying engineering to begin a coffee company. And here we are. I think I've spent the 3 years following that trying to understand the values of both our company and our team personally. And it's been a really interesting journey.
Fascinating. And what have you learned? What have you learned about yourself? What have you learned about the people you work with in terms of their values, whether that's suppliers, partners, or your team?
So we're a not-for-profit. We didn't get any financial capital to start. And the way that we did it was to rent a 6-bed share house and all move in together. And we spent a year working on kind of growing it to the point that it was actually sustainable. And I think that experience was all about values. And I think, Daniel, your point of not just writing them down on a piece of paper straight away and sticking to them, but it's kind of a discovery process. And it was only, we wrote them down 3 months and then looked at them again 6 months and realized that they weren't quite right. And only by the end of the year were we able to actually articulate what we stand for as a brand and as a team. And now we're able to come back to those 3 values that we have when we're making decisions or when we're deciding about where to go. And it's actually really helpful.
Yeah, amazing. And in terms of the language there, I think is really fascinating. And Daniel, I'd love to know for you, especially in the university space too, if someone studies one thing, Darcy and I are talking to 2 engineers, neither of us are working as engineers right now. And you were reflecting on your sort of change in trajectory as well. How can people work through that? If they're listening right now, whether they're a professional who's been doing it for 20 years, or whether they're a student 6 months into their undergrad degree in maths and they're like, don't love this as much as I thought I would. How can people start thinking about making that pivot or making that change if they do really believe that, okay, I've taken a misstep here, or this was the first step in a journey, but the journey is much longer? How do people start to think about making a change?
Well, first things first, it's not a misstep. So you've got to be careful of the language, because I think you got to really look at each experience and situation that you've been through as an experience. And if you look at it the right way, it should be positive. And even if it is negative, you should have learned something from it. So it's not necessarily a misstep, but it's more starting to think about the transferable skills that you get. And I think there's never been a better time in life in regards to the interdisciplinary approach that a lot of companies, organizations, and societies taking. One of my favorite quotes at the moment is that complex problems of the future will be solved by interdisciplinary approaches. So, it's engineers working with business people. It's lawyers working with doctors. It's entrepreneurs working with scientists. It's tech people, perfect example, tech people working with entrepreneurs. And look at Airbnb, Uber. You've got these places. So if you bring that down to the university level, learning skills in a course, whether that be law, engineering, biotech, you're still learning communication skills, problem solving, analytical, technical skills, leadership, teamwork. So it's starting to think about, well, what have I got from this course? And reflecting on that. The hard part is the pivot, the actual pivot. Practically, everyone's situation's different. So it's hard for me to sit here now and give a one-size-fits-all approach. Each individual's got a different set of circumstances with different values to work out what their pivot needs to be. So that's harder to dive into. But I think it's about starting to think about the transferable skills and what you've got from those experiences.
I love that. Darcy, we seem to have just lost Darcy on the stream there, but he's come on at a great time. If you are interested in learning more about what Darcy does, KUA, KUA, the blue logo that's at the top, they're our impact partner on this morning show, starting at 8 a.m. every day, Monday to Friday. And if you're interested in getting your hands on some KUA coffee and doing some World Positive Coffee, supporting families in Uganda, check out KUA. They're at KUA Coffee on Facebook and LinkedIn and all places like that. Screenshot this if you're enjoying this today. Take a little screenshot, take a little snap right now, share it, tag them, go in the draw. We'll send out some coffee to people, which is really, really fun. And also, if you're tuning in today, I think maybe probably more comments on this chat than we've had in any other chat yet. So I think this topic really hits a nerve and is very topical right now. Daniel, one of the things that I love that you said there was about transferable skills. And if you're up for co-hosting and question asking with one more guest while we've got you, I think I did ask you till 8:30. So do you have a hard stop at 8:30? You've got a little bit of time. You got a couple of minutes?
Yeah.
All right,
I'm on a roll now. I've had the coffee. I've had the tea.
Good. Me too. I love this. We've always said 8 till 8:30, and then it rolls until it nearly goes to 9. But we'll let me know if at any point if you need to drop off. And if you are tuning in, we'd love to know. We'd love to hear from you. What are you thinking about in your career? Are you in a career that's really meaningful or a degree that's meaningful? How are you thinking about it? If it's a first step, not a misstep, what have you learned in this first step or this first stage of what will hopefully be a very long and happy career? And we have an amazing young man joining us now, so I'll bring him into the feed. We've got Anthony. So Anthony, I met when I was doing some work with Deakin University. He was a student. Is now.
How you going, Daniel?
Hey, mate.
Anthony's doing all sorts of amazing things. Good morning, my friend, including being responsible for our fun little video that we run at the start of the show. So, Anthony, you've got some skills, mate. Where did you pick up the video editing skills?
To be honest, I always was sort of always interested in video content in general. Like growing up, I was always just fascinated about like the OG YouTube creators. So like there was always an inkling in terms of like video content and video editing. And then second year in uni, I started getting back into it, started delving into YouTube tutorials, creators on Instagram. So yeah, started to take that a bit more serious, get back into video editing. And then, yeah, here we are, created a LinkedIn intro for you. And yeah.
That's cool. And people like it. People want it. People want more of it, which is awesome. And is that something that you think you can see flourishing into a career, or do you see it more of a stepping stone? Do you see it as just a fun skill that you just love doing? What James said before, it's a hobby that you can turn into, whether it's a side hustle or a startup, or how do you think about it?
Yeah, so it definitely was just like a side thing, just a hobby, just me sort of like chasing my curiosities, and then then it turned into sort of like a paid work. It was sort of like a natural progression. At the time, I was working at a casual position at a pop-up store, and then the business owner just was like, "We see what you're like posting on Instagram. Do you reckon you could take the footage that we currently have and turn that into a video?" So I edited a video for them. That was like sort of my paid thing, and then I took it a bit more serious. Then just started pursuing it a bit more. So yeah, it did turn in from like a side hobby to more of like a career now. So right now I'm pursuing, I'm working with a few videographers, and we work with local business owners, and we create video content for them. And then we also promote that on their behalf on social media, hopefully drive awareness to their product or service offering. So yeah.
I love it. And Daniel, are you seeing this in terms of lots of young people coming to you, or university students of all ages needing some of these more, I don't know what the right terminology for it is, but like the skills around video editing and social media and all those things that layer now on top of a traditional job? I know when I was Anthony's age, I didn't have a casual job that said, "Hey, we're watching you on Instagram. We're seeing your videos. Could you do that for us?" Like that conversation didn't happen. Surely due to my complete lack of skill in that area, but also just it wasn't a conversation. Are you seeing that sort of stuff pop up more?
Yeah, definitely. And I think there's never been a time before where individuals need to have such an array of skills. Like it's not enough anymore just to know your topic or your industry or your specific technical side of your job. It's about having technical skills, so you can use LinkedIn, so you can use video, so you're posting. If you've got a business or a startup, you need to understand marketing, social media, accounting, business. And, I think what are the stats on people that have a side hustle? Isn't it like 40% of people in the US have a side hustle? Do you know, Josh?
Yeah, so I know it's just over a third. The data I read was 34% are involved in the gig economy. So that includes like Uber Eats, driving, all that kind of stuff, Airbnb. Yeah. It's like 1 in 3. That's a lot.
It's a lot. Yeah. So lots of people now are starting to have all these skills. From a personal perspective, if I could have one skill and click my fingers tomorrow, it would probably be video. Because I think with the way social media is at the moment, video is really at the top. And I think it's such a good skill set to have.
Yeah, it's an interesting one too, because like I can only imagine, and Anthony, I'd love to know from your experience learning video. I can't imagine you learnt video by just reading a textbook about it, doing a final year exam on video, and then you're like, oh, now I can do video.
Yeah, I think definitely what sets apart video with like the traditional skills is you actually have to get out there and actually learn by doing it. That's how I learned at the start. Like my footage was terrible. Like I knew nothing about lighting or angles or composition. It's purely just getting the footage, just playing around with it and just learning as you go, really.
Yeah. I love that. I love that applying it, just the reality of that. It's like if you're going to learn a sport or an instrument or an art or have a relationship, you got to do the thing. You can't it can't just be about reading the thing. It can be important, but it can't be the whole thing.
100%, yeah.
Awesome. Anthony, thanks for joining us this morning. If people are interested and want to check out your work, learn more about what you do, or get an intro video made for their new LinkedIn Live morning coffee show, how do they find you? Where should they go?
Yeah, you can find me on LinkedIn. Happy to connect with anyone who's interested in learning more about video editing, video content, or marketing in general. Yeah, you could connect with me on LinkedIn.
Cool. Yeah. And your last name spelled Nguyen, is that correct?
No, just so NG, 2 letters. N for Nigel, G for George.
You're on LinkedIn? Oh, I thought you had. Interesting.
There is. Or you could follow me on Facebook. It's ANG Media.
ANG Media. Got you. Okay. Cool.
Yeah.
Cool. I'm crossing my wires.
On LinkedIn as well, Anthony. I need a couple of videos made, I think, as well.
Yeah, we'll definitely connect.
All right.
Definitely.
Nice to meet you.
Awesome.
Cheers, guys. Take care.
Bye.
Josh, I've got a few minutes, then I'm going to have to wrap it up and start getting ready for work.
Let's go. Let's we'll move it on and we'll wrap it up and we'll get you going. I just realized with Anthony, I was getting confused with a guest from the other day, David, Nguyen. I saw that NG. I was like, have we not got your full name on here? People are always like, how do we find these people on LinkedIn? Yeah. Oh, that's such a faux pas by me. Oh, well. Cool. Mate, awesome. So if someone's listening in today and they're thinking, all right, this is interesting. There's lots of different ways to think about it. Frameworks, values, the 1-3-5 year concept is really, really interesting as well. What could be something really practical that someone could do today? Is there a question they might ask themselves, a resource that you really recommend often, a TED Talk or a podcast to listen to? What's something practical that people could do today if they wanted, they're on board with this and they want to take that next step?
Yeah. One thing I'd recommend practically would be a nice quick win to learn more about this. There's a really cool TED Talk from Bill Burnett and Dave Evans from Design Your Life on YouTube. I think it goes for about 18 minutes. They've got a book as well that's really popular at the moment in career circles. But if you watch that 18-minute TED Talk, I think that's a really good overview of of strategies and approaches and frameworks to start to think about designing your life.
Yep.
The other thing I'd say I think is quite underrated is actually take time for yourself, because it's really hard to think about this stuff if you're busy running around during your day doing lots of different tasks. So maybe go for a 20-minute, 30-minute walk and actually just clear your head of all the noise and all the external influences and actually start to think about what you do, why you do it, what would you like to do, and start to reflect. But you don't need the answers in 20 minutes, but maybe go for a walk every day for half an hour. But on that walk, don't listen to music. Don't go with someone. Go by yourself and actually give yourself that space to allow yourself to reflect and maybe start with where you are, which is what you're doing now. What do you like? What don't you like? If you
Yes.
do like something, why do you like it? If you don't like something, why don't you like it? So I'm a big believer in the why. So,
Yes.
you know, you might really love helping uni students create better clubs. Why? And if you keep digging into the why, you'll figure out, well, I love helping people. So then
Yes.
that value can be spread out in lots of different ways in your life.
Yeah. Beautiful. Go for a walk, get some space, take your time, think about the why. Probably just a good note on now everything that's happening with COVID, or just being kind to yourself as well, and not rushing the process. Would you say that's fair?
Yeah, I think that's very fair. I think, as a society, we try to rush too much at the moment. And when it comes to these values and the why and the reflection and the careers stuff, especially, it's a big journey. We're going to be working for the next 40 years,
Yeah,
30
exactly.
years. So it's a long time, you know, settle in, relax, and just enjoy the ride. But you got to still put the effort in, but don't be hard on yourself if you don't get the answers straight away.
Yeah. I love that.
And the key is once you get the answer, in a year or two, it might change.
Not the answer anymore.
It's a constant evolution.
Yes. I love that. Janelle, I really appreciate your time this morning. It's been really fun chatting to you. Awesome having Darcy and Anthony jump on as well, to share their thoughts and insights from people who are in the thick of it, as I guess we're all in the thick of it. But as the reality of careers kick in too, it is getting closer to 9 a.m., 20 to 9 in the morning. So those careers need to happen. It can't all be LinkedIn living. So thanks for joining us. If you've tuned in, thank you for all your comments and thoughts. As always, we will pop this up on YouTube if you want to come back to it, revisit it, explore any of the ideas again. Daniel, we wish you all the best. Thanks for joining us today and for all your wisdom and insights, my man.
Thanks for having me on, and thanks everyone for tuning in. It's been a pleasure.
Awesome. Been a pleasure. If you're with us again tomorrow, we'll see you at 8 a.m. for Coffee with Campus Consultancy, episode number 13. We hope to see you there. Bye all. Have a great day.
See everyone.